this couple and their son and their maid who were brutally, horrifically tortured and murdered in Washington, D.C. by an illegal immigrant, among others. Well, illegal from my point of view. Over at Powerline, they write, one of the most horrifying crimes within memory occurred in Washington on May 13 and 14. A man named Darren Wint broke into a home, commonly described as a mansion, owned by a businessman named Sava Savopoulos. Wint held Savopoulos, his wife Amy, their 10-year-old son Philip, and their housekeeper, Veralicia Fagora, captive for 20 hours, while he tormented them and arranged for a futile ransom to be paid, apparently with the aid of one or more accomplices. Wint made off with a lousy $40,000, but first he murdered the occupants of the home. He beat Mr. Savopoulos to death with a baseball bat while he was tied to a chair. He slashed Mrs. Savopoulos to death with a knife or other sharp object while she was similarly restrained. The 10-year-old boy reportedly was tortured, then burned alive. Details of Mrs. Figueroa's death have not been released, mercifully. She was alive barely when police finally arrived, but expired soon thereafter. Now, having murdered the family, Wint set the house on fire and fled. He was arrested a few days later, linked to a crime by DNA on the remains of a pizza that he ordered while holding the family prisoner within a few blocks of the vice president's house. Needless to say, this low-life scum, those are my words, Darren Wint, will never receive the punishment he deserves. But here's the point. He never should have been in this country in the first place. He immigrated from Guyana in 2000 at the age of 20. Oh, an aspiring young man who loves America. Escaping torment, a refugee, if you will. A man who will help contribute to the American economy. Help us save Social Security. Oh, my goodness. He's a dreamer. The dreamer. His arrival here was legal, apparently because he was related to others from Guyana who were already in the U.S. So he was a legal permanent resident. But a permanent resident doesn't get to stay forever. That designation merely means that there's no legal endpoint to the person's stay at the time when he arrives. He doesn't have a right to stay here forever, even though there's no legal endpoint when he arrives. And he arrives just because he's related to somebody else. Must be nice. It's been obvious for a long time that Darren Wint is a horrible person who should have been expelled from the U.S. long ago. As Mark Kokorian explains, the relevant question here is why this depraved monster was allowed to remain in the United States. It's been obvious for a decade. He was an undesirable alien who should have been sent back. Wint has had more than 30 brushes with the law, including serious charges starting in 2005 as well as minor charges, according to a news report. He had 2 restraining orders filed against him in 2005 and 2006 for threats of violence against others, including his father, stepmother, and younger sister. Since then, he's had several assault convictions, plus multiple arrests for beating his girlfriend, stabbing a man, assaulting a woman at a nightclub, burglary, theft, vandalism, and showing up at his workplace with a machete and a BB gun. He should have been escorted back to Guyana years ago, long before he capped his life off with this crime, this mass murder. He's a green card holder, formerly known as a legal permanent resident, but the permanent part just means his permission to stay here isn't time limited. As a foreigner, he can still be sent home at any time. And after years of frustration with executive laxity, and immigration lawyer obstruction, Congress pushed back in 1996, requiring the deportation of these kinds of people. But the effectiveness of such measures depends on an executive that is committed to immigration enforcement. And Barack Obama is not committed to immigration enforcement, and dare I say, neither was George W. Bush, and dare I say, neither will be Jeb Bush. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have many ways to put an end to this. But one way we have is to make sure, as Republicans, we do not nominate Jeb Bush or any pro-amnesty, open immigration candidate for the Republican nomination. There is a time when enough is enough and lines need to be drawn. This is that time. This is the crucial issue. Among others, but it certainly is a primary matter. No enforcement of the nation's immigration laws didn't begin with Obama administration. Wint should have been sent back to Guyana before Obama was inaugurated. But under Obama, non-enforcement has become for the first time an expressly articulated policy. Obama considers it a great thing, a moral imperative, that people like Darren Wint are not only welcomed in the United States, but left free to prey on our citizens forever, even after dozens of brushes with the law. Only upon a commission of mass murder is any question raised about whether it's really a good idea for us to allow people like him to stay. And it's only raised in the alternative media.